Well, good morning, frothers, and welcome back to another episode of Wheatlow Brew Days. And I've been there, I've got the t-shirt. Today we're going to talk about Theakston's, and not just Theakston's, but the world-famous beer, Theakston's Old Peculier. Theakston Old Peculier, of course, is a beer of world renown, available all over the world, but it's made in North Yorkshire, in Masham, at the Theakston's Brewery. Theakston's was founded in 1827, and it later ran for many years, went through the ups and downs of two world wars, of course, and then the 60s sort of keg movement and the growth of lager in the 70s, 80s, 90s. It's come through all these different things over the years, but in 1984, the family business was sold to eventually became Scottish and Newcastle, and then later part of Heineken, and it therefore stopped being a family brewer. But in 2003, four brothers, Simon, Nick, Tim, and Edward, brought the business back from Heineken, and it re-became a famous English family brewery, of which there aren't that many left these days. So it's fiercely independent, very concerned with its own things rather than worrying about anyone else. In particular, of course, its close neighbour Black Sheep. And so now the brewery is thriving under family ownership, independent, and still maintaining many brewing traditions. And one of the traditions that the Theakston family brewery preserves brilliantly is that of a cooperage. There's a cooperage still at the brewery. They still actually use some oak casks for Old Peculier in particular at local pubs. And the cooper's name today is Ewan Findlay. He's rather famous on YouTube and Instagram as Ewan the Cooper. If you want to look him up, it's quite interesting to see how these traditions are kept alive and how he makes beer barrels and casks from 14 tools, I think it is, by hand, by eye, using all the old methods. And that's just typical of the way that this family brewery is trying to keep traditions alive. And another typical way that they're doing that is by pushing against the trends, if you like, and their most famous flagship beer is an old ale. Not something we come across all that much in the UK today, an old ale. There are one or two that I can think of, like Marston's Old Roger, Robinson's Old Tom, those kind of things. But Theakston's Old Peculier is a really world-famous beer. Now, if you were to ask me, do you like Old Peculier a few months ago, I'd have said, well, it's a famous beer, I respect it, but it's not really my thing. It's a bit dark and sweet and heavy and strong and that sort of thing. One of the things that's changed my mind about this started in Bruges, when I last visited Bruges, and if you go to De Gare, they serve a dark triple, and they serve it with a little plate of lumps of cheddar type cheese. And if you drink those if you drink that beer in combination with that cheese, it's absolutely transformational and makes the beer beautiful, thick, creamy head, dark, strong beer, not dissimilar in some senses to what we're talking about here. So eating the right food with a beer like this can make all the difference, as it can, of course, with wines. And the other thing, of course, was the recent visit to Theakston's Brewery, where we've gone up to the brewery and we've drank a pint of Theakston's Old Peculier in the brewery tap, served from a wooden cask through a hand pull, through a sparkler, with a thick, creamy head. And I could not believe how delicious this beer was. In fact, Simon Theakston himself said to me, A, you need to have it in a pint, and B, when you take your first sip, you need to have a good slug of it. And if anybody watches the Prime Mutton taking his Guinness sips, he always has a good, almost half a pint swig, and he's drinking the beer through the froth, through the creamy foam. And it's very much like that with Old Peculier, where if you have a nice pint of it, which enables the creamy head to form properly rather than a half, then drink the beer through the creamy head. It's absolutely delicious. It's so smooth. It's so, it's not pokey in any way. There's no harsh chocolate or roasty notes. It's smooth, it's dark fruit, it's balanced with the hops, and the creaminess really comes through. So completely transformed my opinion about this beer, and therefore very, very excited to have a go at brewing it. Now, at Theakston's, they guard the secrets of the recipes and the water and so on, but they were very kind to show us around. In fact, we met the head brewer. We were shown round by Simon Theakston himself and the MD Richard as well. So really looked after us, made a fuss of us, and although they wouldn't give us their secrets, they were also very open at showing us everything and talking about the quality of the ingredients and which ones were used and so on. So I think we've got absorbed into the ethos of the Theakstons brand, the family brewery, if you like, and these are the things that Simon Theakston kept saying, such as Yorkshire, Yorkshire, Yorkshire.
No, well, we in Yorkshire brew beer the best in the country.
Yeah.
Because we in the civilised north of England like to have beer with a nice, rich, creamy head on it. Yeah. In Yorkshire, we understand these things.
We like a creamy head. British cask ale is the finest long alcoholic drink that you can get, and all these things.
The top and bottom of it all is that there is no finer long alcoholic drink in the world than English cask conditioned beer. And if you can get it in a perfect condition, it's fantastic.
That make this beer great. So I think being absorbed into that and understanding what the thinking behind the beer is almost as important as the precise recipe. And we do know a lot of details, such as, for example, starting with the malt, they use Thomas Fawcett maltings, which is at Castleford, I think, West Yorkshire. So that again fits into the Yorkshire First theme. And they use a variety called Pearl, an old variety that goes back many years, like other heritage malts like Golden Promise and Maris Otter. And Pearl is a pale malt. Pearl pale malt is the basis of this beer. And then, so we know that's the actual pale malt. And then we know that the beer is dark. It looks black at first sight, but when you hold it up to the light, it's a ruby red colour. And we know that they use crystal malt. Now, I'm taking a guess on this, that this kind of beer might have about 15% of a kind of medium crystal in it. Not that dissimilar to the Sarah Hughes Ruby Mild that we did not long ago. But what I've decided to do in this case is layer the crystal malts. So I'm going with some dark and some medium. They would use Thomas Fawcett, I think. I couldn't get dark Thomas Fawcett crystal, so I've used dark Simpson's crystal, but it's very similar, 265 EBC at 12.6%. And then I'm using some medium crystal or lighter crystal that's the Thomas Fawcett standard crystal malt of 130 EBC at 6.3%. So combined crystal malts there are 18.9%. So that is quite heavy on the crystal. I hope I haven't overdone it. Time will tell. And then very importantly for the head retention and the smoothness that we expect from these Yorkshire beers is a combination of flaked torrified maize and torrified wheat.
We use a bit of torrified wheat and flaked maize because we in the civilised north of England like to have beer with a nice rich creamy head on it. Yeah. And torrified wheat and flaked maize help create that rather lovely creamy head, which is really important.
I've used torrified wheat a lot in beers to add head retention, brilliant in a golden ale, and flaked maize also does that. It'll also add some nice fermentable sugars to help the yeast kick off. So I've got 3.8% flaked maize, 2.5% torrified wheat. The base malt was 68.1%. And then, just to balance the colour, I've got a little bit of black malt. And I've already mashed in this morning, actually, and I've left the black malt out. I'm going to put it in at the end, very end of the mash, just to add colour, but no harshness, no coffee, no chocolatey, dark chocolatey stuff, or less of it anyway, trying to get the colour primarily, and that's just 0.5%, just a tiny touch to tweak the colour. And then back to our new favourite Invert sugar number 2, 3.9%. Add a little bit of those sort of muscovado sugar, sort of toffiness type things, plus really fermentable sugar to get the yeast going. And then a little bit of dextrin sugar as well, or corn sugar, 2.4%. So that's a complex malt bill. I've made it up, if you like, but I hope it's an educated guess. I'm really excited to see how this turns. Mashed in, it's actually just heating up to the mash out temperature now, so it's about time we went and put the black malt in. So let's actually go and have a look at what the colour's like now. Colour now is a kind of slightly reddish brown. Certainly it's not dark enough. So I think I'm right to have the black malt, and hopefully putting it in at the end now to restrict the harshness is hopefully the right thing to do. There it is. And it smells quite sort of coffee-ish, even a bit ashtray-ish actually. Bit of burnt toast, that kind of thing. So it'll be really interesting to see what this does to the colour. Sprinkle it on top. They do show you some kind of dark malt in the tour, whether it's roasted barley or black malt, something else a bit strange, like a, I don't know, Carafa Special 3 or something. I'm not sure. But we definitely, when you taste the Theakston's Old Peculier, you definitely can't get any sort of stouty coffee harshness at all. It's all balanced sweetness, dark fruits, raisins, prunes, that kind of thing. Right, now the hops on this beer are, we know that it's got certain hops in it. We also know anecdotally it doesn't have a great deal of them in it because we saw the pile that was ready to make a brew of it and it didn't look like a massive amount. It's hardly surprising. The EBC, the IBU on this is said to be around about 30, 29, 30, and we've gone for around that mark. And they also use all leaf hops as usual, like the trad breweries do. So this is what I've come up with. A bit of a guess. but hopefully somewhere along the right lines. Certainly, I think we've got the right hops because Simon Theakston confirmed that when we were in the hop room.
Target, Challenger and Progress, the bittering hops, and then Fuggle for Old Peculier. That's it.
We just don't know the quantities and the ratio between them and how much is used at the beginning and how much at the end. But here goes. At the start of the boil, 60-minute boil, Challenger, 9.1 IBUs, some Progress at 8.3 IBUs, and some Target as well, 7.3 IBUs. And then at the end of the boil, just the last 10 minutes, we're going to put a little bit of Fuggles in, 1.4 IBUs. And then we're also going to put some Fuggles in the Whirlpool in our case, which is the effectively trying to create the hopback effect, the hopback effect that they would have at the brewery. So I'm going to use some whole leaf Fuggles for that as well to try and use that, get that delicacy out of the hops in the last bit. I'm going to do it at a kind of knockout temperature of about, probably start at 96 and it will cool down to about 93, something like that. And that will give us 3.7 IBUs. Also important to think on this is we're going to use a dry hop. Also Fuggles, also whole leaf. They use those little plugs, just put one plug in per cask. If I can find out how much is normally in such a plug, then that's the exact amount I'll put in. I haven't just found that out yet, but I imagine it's going to be in the region of about 20 grams, something like that. So I think that'll be important to the final taste to give it the dry hop. They still do that today, so that's interesting. Now, at Theakston's, they have a house yeast. And when we went into the yeast room with Simon Theakston, made us note the smells in there, and they were the esters were of banana and black cherry. And the house yeast in all these traditional breweries is always important. So how to recreate that at home? Well, what I've done is I've using Y yeast 1469, the West Yorkshire strain that I also use for Landlord. And we've worked that up quite well. And for the Theakston's Best Bitter, which I did a week ago, I've also added in a bit of Windsor yeast. So we think that the Windsor yeast, which is the junior partner, by the way, in this arrangement, probably 25% Windsor yeast, the rest 1469, is just going to give a little bit of certain fruity esters, and the West Yorkshire perhaps will give the others. We're going to treat the yeast like a Yorkshire yeast, so we've got a big wet pitch that we've harvested off the top of the Theakston's Best Bitter that I just took that off the top yesterday. It's in a bucket in the cold room. It's nice and frothy. It's a couple, probably 5 litres worth of quite frothy froth at the moment. And so I think the yeast is going to be great. We'll rouse it Yorkshire style once it's established. We'll do open fermentation. And so hopefully got everything in place to get this beer bang on. This is one where I'd really like to get close if possible. Whether I can or not, I don't know. Or whether it's going to be as good as it was in the brewery, which, as I said earlier, was absolutely amazing to drink the beer in its perfect condition and in its perfect place and environment, and the correct serving through the sparkler with a creamy head makes all the difference. And you may well see Old Peculier on in a pub occasionally. Now, usually when that's the case, it'll be a good pub because it's got that on. But in order to put Old Peculier on, it's probably got 4 other beers at least. And Old Peculier is the kind of thing where people have a half a pint at the end. And sometimes when it gets poured, it doesn't have much of a head. It's been sitting in the lines, sitting in the pump. I'm not saying it's off because it's usually in a good pub. But what I mean is that this beer, when it's at the centre point of the pub, as it was in the brewery tap, and the beer's flowing, people are having it in pints instead of halves, and it's at the correct temperature, the correct condition, and it's forced through the sparkler and have that crucial creamy head, then it's absolutely a different beer. And of course, the bottle that you can get in the supermarkets, it will never do a beer like this justice. It has to be drunk on the cask. So I really hope that we can, if we don't get the taste perhaps exact or the colour exact, I really hope that we can get the texture, if you like, the Yorkshire creaminess that's so important. If we can get that right, then I think it'll be a delicious and dangerously drinkable beer. And that's what we're aiming for here. In fact, if it wasn't so famous a beer, I could probably leave the strength off the pump clip and worry about it too much, as people do, and then drink it in pints and just enjoy themselves. But we'll come to that later. So in the meantime, I'm going to start the transfer to the kettle, and we'll check this colour again. Right, so hops, Challenger first, Progress, and then a bit of Target as well, 40 grams in my case. Right, so it's not a lot, is it? That's all the bittering hops. Not a great deal. Took some doing. Right. So 100 grams of just Fuggles for the Whirlpool hop stand to mimic the hop back in a nice sausage. So we'll get them smell nice. And boil's just coming to a finish now. Got the little addition for the last 10 minutes, which is the 50 grams of Fuggles, 3 proof off, and better put some yeast nutrient in them. About a gram per hectolitre, 1 to 2 grams per hectolitre, I think it is. Just enough to give the yeast its goodies. Right, I've just cut off my Invert sugar, 1.25 kilos. Invert sugar number 2, which comes in a solid 25 kilogram block. And if you didn't see my other videos where I did a lot about it, it looks like that, sort of fudgy texture, and it's got a bit of a sweet taste, muscovado, brown sugar, that kind of taste. So, and being invert sugar, which means that it's been split down to glucose and fructose, I think, highly fermentable sugars that don't need to be broken down by enzymes in the yeast, then it means it's highly fermentable. So it's really great to get the yeast off to a flying start on fermentation and create that krausen that protects the beer from the elements when it's in the open fermentation. And we've also got a touch of corn sugar dextrin as well. Slightly lower percentage, 2.4% of the total sugars. Again, important to get the yeast flying off the blocks. So I'll chuck those in now, check the gravity, and then we can start the boil. Right, that's the colour that I've got. It looks, as I know it's cloudy, but it looks quite dark, but I think it may be a touch light, especially when we add sparge water to it. So I've got another little 50 grams of black malt, so I'll adjust the numbers on the in the recipe to reflect that, and hopefully that'll just top it up a bit more. I'm going to be careful with adding this black malt because I don't want the taste really from it. Let's see. Shoop. Right, so I'm going to tuck that up with the lid on until we see some activity, and then we'll go back to open fermentation. Keep it reasonably cool to start with. I think they pitched it about 18, and then there's some yeast nutrient in here as well, which hopefully will help it, which I put in at the end of the boil. Oopa. Very interesting to see how this one turns out. Hopefully it'll be super. The old Peculier has been going for 24 hours now. It's got a bit of a head on it, so I can take this lid off, and it's getting quite near the top actually already. Oh, the smell. Now then, am I getting black cherry? Possibly, more possibly a bit of apple. Maybe some banana. We might be near. Anyway, look at this colour of the froth. Nice dark tan colour. Anyway, it's time to actually rouse it up. Mix it in a bit. So I'll just dunk my jug in hot water. Sanitize that as well. I've got a sanitised jug, a sanitised hand, but what I haven't got is much head space actually ever. So this is a tradition, I've said before, that in Yorkshire they often rouse the yeast routinely. I have to admit, I can't remember whether they do it at Theakston's or not, but they certainly do it at Timothy Taylor. They certainly do it at Samuel Smith's. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do rouse the yeast, pump it from the bottom of the tank, fantail it onto the top, get some oxygen, get some oxygen in the beer, get some CO2 out, and that helps your yeast multiply a little bit more and become a bit more active, stops it sticking or stalling. Right, time to rouse the OP yeast again, just to make sure it's doing its job. Get it mixed back in, get it aerated so that it reproduces, otherwise we're going to get a stuck fermentation. The gravity at the moment is 1022. I want it a lot lower than that. It did overflow the other day, which made a right mess. And when it did overflow, the trouble is that it's all like really thick, heavy yeast that's come out of the vessel, and that's the very stuff that you want to finish the fermentation off. So that's why I'm just making sure that it's nice and roused, nice and healthy. Obviously you don't want to do it too close to the end because you're getting oxygen in the beer, but this at 1022, it's going to purge it out the system. It's going to purge it out the beer before packaging and during packaging, of course, because it's cask conditioned. Smells beautiful. Dark sugars, toffees, fruit. Right, that should do it. See if that gets the froth going. Right, I've got here a sample of Old Peculier from the tank. Colour doesn't look too far off, does it? Smells a bit sort of raisiny, dark, fruity and stuff, but I'm concerned about the taste. Maybe it's too early to tell, but it tastes like it's got a bit of a harsh taste to it to me, maybe from the black malt. Now, I've been re-editing the videos for the tour of Theakston's, and I've realised that you can just about see a pallet of Invert sugar number 2, and next to it a pallet of caramel colourant, TMF caramel colourant. So I think that's the answer to this beer, where instead of using black malt or roasted barley or anything like that to get the dark colour, it just needs that bit of caramel colourant to darken it, so you don't get the harshness from the black or roasted barley malts. We'll see how it turns out. If this comes out too harsh in the cask, then it looks like I'm not going to quite hit the mark. And but I think I will. If that's the case, I'll have to have a rebrew, I think. It is the first iteration. You can't get it absolutely bang on first time, can you? Right, frothers, I've been thinking about the Old Peculier, and when we went for a pint for the debrief after the tour with Simon Theakston, he explained to us 3 things about Old Peculier. One is that it needs to be served in a pint with a thick, creamy head. And secondly, it's better from the wood, from the oak cask. And thirdly, he said it's really important, a little bit when you have a Guinness, to really take a good gulp, drink it through that creamy head to get the full effect. And it's been niggling me a little bit that we're just not going to be able to achieve that. How we're going to serve it from an oak cask and get the real soft mouthfeel and the beautiful effect that we experienced in the brewery, because that beer on site in the brewery tapped absolutely delicious. I didn't actually think that I was an Old Peculier fan. Sometimes when you go in the pub, it's the 5th, 6th beer along, and it's getting somewhat neglected by the drinkers and so on. Some people say it's a bit sweet, but absolutely when you have it on site, in the right place, the right atmosphere, the right time, I must admit it's a beautiful, beautiful beer. Thick, creamy head, the mousse all clinging to your moustache, and it drinks beautifully. It's not overly sweet, it's just balanced, creamy, and it doesn't really feel as strong as it is either at 5.6%. So in order to try and get one step closer to replicating that, and I can hardly contain myself for the excitement, because I've managed to persuade you and the Cooper to very kindly sell me an oak cask. And here it is, it's just come today. He's even adorned it with the Wheatlow logo, and it's what they call a reworked cask. So it's come back in, it's replaced whatever needs to be replaced, possibly the headers and things, re-put it back together, put it in what they call, soak it in sodium bicarbonate, soda wash I think they call it, a couple of times to just balance out the tannins from the wood. So hopefully, I'm really excited about this. It's a firkin as well, not a pin, so I can put 9 gallons of OP in this and try and recreate the proper effect from the wood here at Wheatlow Brewery. So as you can see, it's a beautiful looking thing. It's really quite heavy, and it's got this brass ferrule or tut or whatever you call them here as well for the keystone and the shive, and hopefully my little plastic shives and keystones will fit. The one for the shive seems a bit small, but I think I'll be able to get it in. I need to get this out and test that. Yeah, really excited about this. Can't wait to fill it with Old Peculier. But first, I think we need to wash it. Now, you may have picked up in the video there, Ewan says you can't wash them with any of the caustic stuff. So you can only use hot water and possibly some peracetic acid. And peracetic acid, of course, which is basically vinegar. It's a very traditional way of washing barrels and casks. And a lot of people use it in the wine industry even today. So first of all, I'm going to put it onto the brewery with a spray ball and just clean it with hot water, as hot as I can get it. Possibly get it up to about 90, I think, before it starts moaning. Super. Oh, and smell, by the way. It smells delicious. Doesn't smell sour anyway. It's what they call sweet, i.e. no off beer smell in there. It smells oaky, quite oaky actually. I'm a bit concerned that the first beer might take on too much oak flavour, but it's only going to be in there about 6 days actually till we taste it. So I don't think we're going to have a massive effect from that. And we'll give it a good wash now. We'll see whether the water turns brown or not, and that'll give us an indication as to what, if anything, is leaching out. Super. Pretty heavy. Well, good news is, one is taken out, those the same size, so that's good news. Right, I'm going to just leave the heating elements on. It's saying it's about 50 degrees now, and let it just warm up, get as hot as I dare. Because heat's the only way you can sanitise these, really. So we mustn't forget the dry hop, of course. I'm going for the same as the best bitter. It was, which was just 10 grams for a 9 gallon. So I'm going to put 10 grams in the oak cask. Right, let's get these in now then. Right, I'm going to try and put them the right way up this time, so I've got a wider hole to put my hops into, so that means I need to hammer in the keystones. It's really heavy, isn't it, this oak cask? Right, are we ready? Lid off. let's get the hops in. May as well put them in first, don't we, so that it mixes onto them. Oh, that is so much easier than through the little keystone, although I still made a mess. So not much up with that in terms of being the king's measure. Right, so I'll just get some finings now and get them in. Right, so this is an old Peculier, and the
lovely frothing head.
one on the left is the real one. It's just a bit brighter, but the colour is, if you hold it up to the light,
The colour's spot on.
Oh man, it's got that beautiful deep red kind of glow
ruby
to
red.
it, isn't it?
It's almost like, yeah,
see if I can put a light behind it.
I don't know how you describe it other than the deep red.
Hue.
Hue,
There
yeah.
you go. It's a sort of, ruby red, I suppose it really
It is ruby red, yeah.
So the heads look the same, don't they?
Exactly the same colour.
Yeah,
Same colour, same tightness, same.
Yeah, same.
both clinging to the glass the same.
Now the
Left's the real.
yeah, that's the real. Now the difference with mine as well is, just perhaps a bit unfair, is I've put mine in an oak cask.
How long has it been in there though?
It's not been in long, for a week, something
Right,
like
okay,
So
so
you'll have little.
yeah. But that's a brand new that's a brand new wood cask.
that. It's a reworked one,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's not. It shouldn't. You said it shouldn't give much flavour. You can taste it a bit, can't you?
They're both sticking to the glass nicely anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, you can taste it. I tell you what else it's done as well. It's added a bit of tannin to it because you can feel that tannin in on your palate.
I wonder if that's the reason that it's so much more dry or bitter, because the finishing gravity is actually higher.
Yeah,
Yet it's like drier.
that's
isn't it?
that's definitely tannin. Yeah.
Is that what that
Yeah,
taste
yeah,
is?
absolutely.
Right. I thought I'd overhopped it,
No.
or I thought it had attenuated, so I measured them both.
I don't normally notice tannin flavours in beer much. It's normally cider you get it, isn't it?
But
Wine,
that's why if you're brewing something like an imperial stout or something that you're going to oak, it's really important that it finishes relatively high because the extra tannin or what the drying nature of the tannin makes it Yeah, feel like a much drier beer.
So I should be careful about upping it. It'd be interesting to taste one from the steel, one of mine from the steel. So, what an amateur not opening 3
Oh. And where's the dry hopped version?
Well, now this is something else I'm concerned about, because I've racked the real old Peculier off to get the yeast as soon as I opened it. No dry hops inside. And I was led to believe at the brewery that there was dry hop in every cask.
What dry hop in the traditional way?
Yeah.
Like throw a handful of hops in.
Where all the ingredients are laid out, there's those hop biscuits or plugs.
Oh, I know what they are. T45 hops. Yeah.
And
Plugs.
so he says, yeah, we put them in, but there wasn't any in that pin I've had anyway. So I have dry hopped it with some fuggles. I think in this occasion the real one's a bit easier to drink because of that sweetness compared to this. What do you think?
I think that same butteriness is coming through on this beer that came through in the best bitter. So that's it.
The yeast again.
The yeast again, yeah. And I actually prefer the drying of your beer.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just quite nice to do that.
So how close would you think? It's hard to say with that dryness, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a little bit different with
I
that
find it
dryness.
quite
You can,
yeah. When I had it at the brewery, and by the way, Simon Theakston says when you have Old Peculier, you have to have it in a pint so that you get the thick, creamy head. Says you've got to take a decent gulp at it as well.
Yeah, okay.
So you have to drink it through the head like Guinness to get that texture of it. So we shouldn't be playing with these really,
Well,
but
you two
I think
are
if we
playing.
had 2 pints of Old Peculier, you'd know it.
What alcohol volume is it? 6.8, is it?
It's 5.6 is the official.
5.6.
Yeah, it's not that bad. And mine's come out 5.4.
Really is full-bodied.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Full-on beer, isn't it?
Yeah. What is the final gravity? Is it reasonably high?
1017.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah,
And this one's 1014.
definitely tell us higher, can't you?
So I knew which hops were in it, but not how many and when. But I knew there was some hopback hops. So I think, if I remember rightly, we just used Fuggles in the hopback or in the whirlpool. And 2 types of crystal, a medium and a dark.
You can tell that layer in a flavour. It's the only way it's not.
They would then adjust it with caramel colourant, but I didn't have any. So you can buy the gravy stuff which has got salt in it. So I think they use that. So I've used some black malt, but I put it in right at the end of the mash to try and reduce the harshness.
Okay.
It's only a handful. So
Excellent.
cheers.
That's a fantastic experiment, but I think that really shows what the wood's doing.
Yeah. And perhaps it'll calm down after the 1 or 2 uses as well, because it's probably planed the inside of the staves and everything, so it's probably
Where did you get a barrel from like that?
from Theakston's.
Okay.
From you in the Cooper.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I follow him on Instagram. It's interesting watching him.
It's brilliant. He's made me a reworked one, and
Brilliant.
And a beer cask is a real different, more skillful job because it has to be a unique measure, almost like a legal measure.
Yep.
It has to be strong enough to be chucked down upstairs.
Yep.
It has to withstand 20 psi pressure, and you need the brass.
Yeah, by the time it's carbonated in the cellar or conditioned in the cellar, it
And
really
then
maps up.
you have those brass ferrules for the shive and keystone, so you can just hammer them in.
Yeah.
So it's a brilliant thing. Have you seen it?
Yeah, well, no, I haven't seen
You have to go
it.
in the
Can
cellar.
we get it on the video?
Why not?
Let's take it round.
I think that it's quite likely. I mean, I don't actually know, but I bet it's more difficult making a smaller one than it is making a.
Probably. Because when you watch the video, the lid bite goes in and then comes out, doesn't it? So the smaller you make it, the harder it will be
You
to...
would think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So...
Anyway, I found it quite exciting when I had my own customers.
I can quite imagine.
Yeah. How do they clean them? It's hot water
Yeah, and steam.
and steam.
Yeah.
I bet that's a pain in the backside.
Well, actually, cleaning casks with steam when you're geared up in a brewery is not that difficult, is it?
No, but I meant, does it actually clean it? That's the question, isn't it? I'm just like anti-wood.
Well, steam will kill everything, whether it cleans it or not.
Yeah, well, it'll kill it, but how far is it seeped into the wood?
Yeah, well, and that's why you paint the end grains so that if you leave it in a puddle, it doesn't suck the nasty stuff up.
Yeah.
But you've got to get your publicans to buy into getting them back quickly and sealing them at the pubs.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
Moral.
if you,
That's not going to
and
happen with
if they
customers
dry,
I deal with. No
if they
chance.
dry out, it's
Do you
absolutely
get
screwed.
corks in your returns?
I reckon about, like 1 in 400, I reckon I get a cork in.
So I remember talking with my brother years ago, and he said I could never have a van hire business because I couldn't stand to see the vans have a scratch down the left-hand side all the time and not be looked after. I think if I had a real brewery, I couldn't stand to think that my casks would get dented.
Oh, I'd be more worried about them getting nicked.
Or nicked, yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, to touch wood, I've not had any go missing, to be fair. No. I have some that are like out there for a while.
To put the Seaver stickers on.
No, I've only just joined Seaver recently, so I've not done that. But they're all engraved in the top raw wool, and they're all numbered, and I've got a bit of a system where I know where they are and what they are.
Nice,
We're going to have a look at this wooden...
Yeah, let's
what's the
have a look
technical term for it again?
Cask.
Still a cask?
Yeah.
They don't call it out fancy.
They market it as in the local pubs that use them. They say it's from the wood.
From the wood.
Peculier from the wood.
So, what beer are you going to do from the wood? Richard spec.
Well, that's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah, very good question.
I've got to try Bass in it, I think, just because I know it's like an ordinary beer, but
Yeah.
just that's how it used to be, isn't it?
Could we do a collab on the wood and give it to one very unique customer? Does it who that is, yeah?
That'd be also.
£500 a cask.
What about doing Guinness?
Sell it in thimblefuls.
Yeah.
Have a Guinness night from the wood, nitro pour, and from steel.
Yeah, okay. I've noticed you've got a Guinness.
Cheers, good health. I've got nothing to cheers
This is your bitter.
Still. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, very nice.
Super.
When Tom came back with a third of our dog peculier, it's like you.
Well, quite. Super. Nice to see you.
I do. Thanks for inviting us.
So,
Yeah?
do you want to go and see the cast?
Let's go and have a look. I'm enticed.
So it's reworked, so it takes an old one apart and then...
That's a pit.
no, it's a
Full
Birkin.
kind of Birkin, okay.
Yeah.
It looks smaller.
Well, it doesn't look smaller when you try and pick it up. Obviously, you can hardly lift it. No wonder he's a muscular chap because there's some weight in it. And when it's full as well.
These are still normal, the ones.
Yeah, luckily my normal ones fit.
What do they use? Do they still use the same ones, or do they use something different?
As far as I know, yeah, unless they use wooden ones. But the trouble with wooden ones is that the bits go inside and they're hard to get out. So breweries don't like using wooden shags and keystones.
I know you've done a bit of homemade stuff. Why don't you have a go at making your own?
Put me in.
I'll tell you what, that's a skill to learn, isn't it?
That's a learning curve. You've made your own union system.
Well, they're after a new apprentice.
Oh, are they? Your day job?
You do it in spare time, you'll be able to knock one of those, that'll be alright.
What is it, a 4-year apprenticeship?
Is it?
Yeah.
Mind you, if I had to live in Masham, I wouldn't be doing that at all.
So it's an aspirational wooden cask.
Yeah, that's
It's like old and new together.
an anathema, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, excellent.
No.
Well, it's tasting delicious anyway.
30-degree heat. It's not natural cask.
It's not all peculiar, rather, is it? Yeah. So, should we try these two?
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, the only thing is that mine's from the wood, and yours isn't. And
It's unusual to be trialing Old Peculier not from the wood against another version from the wood.
Yeah. And it's a fresh cask, so I think I've got a bit of sort of tannin in there, really.
Yeah, bit of tannin, and it's not quite clear, is it? Not quite bright.
It's not 100% bright. No.
Yeah,
It's fairly bright.
it's hard to.
It's not as bright. So
I think when you look at the bottom of the glass and see the light, it's just not quite as clear.
it's only been in Cask a week. Do you prefer to age OB or not? Doesn't matter.
Not necessarily, no. I mean, obviously, if people are putting it in wood, there's some of the pubs that take the wood prefer to keep it in a little bit longer. Let a bit more of the wood character come in. Yeah, I think you've got all the taste characteristics of OP, but the tannin is a bit overpowering.
I find it a bit better.
Yeah.
My finishing gravity was actually higher than yours, so I think I've made a mistake. I need to mash hotter next time.
Okay. What mash temperature did you do?
I probably, from memory, did it at about 66.
Yeah, we tend to mash at 68.
Do you? Yeah, okay. So I think that would help. Possibly make it a bit sweeter, but the final gravity is a bit lower. But in this process, my yeast overflowed.
Yeah, I saw from the video.
And when it does that, you lose all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And then it's difficult to attenuate that final bit. So I was a bit grumpy about that.
Yeah.
But
so we mash at 68. Target OG is 1060.
right. Okay.
So occasionally we get people contacting us saying, "Have you ever lowered the ABV of Old Peculier?" And the reality, and people think we have. The reality is we never have.
Right.
But I think what people had in their head was, in the past on pump tips it used to say sort of 1060. So they got in their head 6%. It's always been 5-6.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I'd have got an OG of 1060, then I would have been on the strength. But mine's 5.4 because I did it at 1057.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the tannins make it a little bit less drinkable than the real one.
Yeah, I would.
Unless I've overbitten it.
Unfortunately, I'd have to agree. I think it's. I always think with Old Peculier, because of the name and a bit of its reputation and dark, people think it's a more challenging drink than it really is. It's actually quite a smooth, easy drinking beer.
When I had it in the brewery and Simon said, you need it in a pint, have that thick creamy head and take a decent gulp.
Yeah.
It's just like an elixir. It's an eye-opener for me because I thought I didn't really like it. I thought it was strong, sweet, dark, and but that was very drinkable.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to have another go at it.
Okay.
Try and hone it in a bit.
Yeah, good.
I also didn't use any caramel colourant in it. So,
I think you got the colour.
Colour's good.
The colour's actually spot on, I think.
But I used black malt just to tweak the colour.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of did it a bit by eye on the fly. I guessed so much and then I chucked a bit more in. But that might contribute to a bit of harsh bitterness as well. Even though I waited till the end of the mash to put it in.
Yeah. No, I think I wouldn't change the colour. You got the colour absolutely spot on. Yeah. I think it's I think to try and do that from visiting the brewery, observation, and then going out and working out how to do it yourself, I think you've done a really good job.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good. It's good fun. It's a game of trying to hone it in. And of course, what I think is really good, because if we were just standing here drinking this, and not comparing it side by side with the actual cask, not a bottle, that's the key. So because as a brewer now I can taste it side by side, I can see what the difference is and maybe tweak it a little bit closer for next time. Thanks for selling me the casks.
Cheers.
Cheers, good luck.
I reckon that's not a bad effort for the first attempt.
Do you want to try it against the real one? I can pour a real one as well.
This is the real one.
You reckon that's the real one?
It can't be really because you've given me out of your. So where's the real one?
And that pump there.
That's a good effort, Paul.
Super.
Fucking hell, it is.
How's the brewery gone then, Rich?
What's the difference in taste? I haven't tasted it.
Have you?
I know which is good.
Well, I know which is rich because it's fucking on the fucking signs.
Which is a smoother.
This is the smoother. But it's bloody close, that is.
I think it might be the oak just making it a bit bitter with the tannins.
Yeah, I could taste it straight away. You've got that.
Yeah.
The bitter it tastes.
It'll be interesting to taste it when I open the metal cask next week. Right, so speaking of which, I've just opened a metal cask of my old Peculier to see what the difference is actually without the influence of the oak, because could have been the tannins and the oak, but I suspect there's a bit of both. Now I've just gravity pour straight from the cask. I've just poured one of mine, and it's lovely and bright now, so that extra week or two has helped. And I've got in here this Oxybar keg, the last bit of old Peculier, real old Peculier, from their cask, which I just saved in an Oxybar so that I could do this very thing. So let's try and pour one of these. And then, I mean, we don't really need the head, do we, just to taste the difference. But I have got a syringe here, and it is a bit of a trick to get a head on something that hasn't been through a sparkler, to give it a couple of squirts through a syringe. You can sort of simulate the cask effect a little bit. Right, so there we have it then. That's my one. Definitely tastes less of that harsh bitterness than we had from the oak. But real OP is still a bit sweeter. Or it tastes sweeter anyway, and less dry bitterness, so it makes it more drinkable somehow. So is this to do with the dark malts that I've used? Well, we really have run out of time for this episode, haven't we? But what I'll do in the future is I'm going to have another go at it. This was the first attempt I've done at Old Peculier, so I'm not too disappointed that it's not absolutely bang on. Also, didn't have much information to go off, and it's a notorious beer for homebrewers having a go at and thinking they just can't quite get it, a bit like I was experiencing with my Bass as well. It's a really hard one to emulate, so I'm not too disappointed. In fact, I've thoroughly enjoyed the process of going around Theakston's, keeping my eyes open, listening to what's said, and trying to emulate this classic old ale. It's been really great, but I will give it another go. And I really want to thank Theakston as well, Simon Theakston, Mark Slater, Richard Bradbury, and of course you and the Cooper for making me so welcome on the tour, and being so friendly towards me and supportive of, you know, what amounts to an overly enthusiastic home brewer poking around. And I just think they're a really great family company, and it was good to see Richard here, of course, for the tasting as well. And having the oak cask is going to be absolutely brilliant, isn't it, for various experiments going forward. So it's growing on me. is I'm going to have another go at it. I'm going to alter the malt bill slightly to try and, in fact, I'm going to alter several things. First of all, I've harvested the yeast from this cask of Old Peculier, so I can have the right yeast. Secondly, let's look at the malt bill, drop the black malt certainly, maybe ease down on the dark crystal for that to get a softer darkness from it, not so much of the roasty stuff. And also, we saw at the Theakston's tour that they use a caramel colourant, TMF caramel colourant. So I think we should try and do that. I've had a word with Rob at the malt miller to see if he can stock it. And so I hope that you other homebrewers are going to have a go at this and maybe use that, because otherwise they'll have a hell of a lot of caramel colourant in stock. So I'm going to do those tweaks to the recipe, but I'll save it for a future episode because we've been on this an hour already. So I mean, it's still quite close, don't get me wrong, but it's just niggled me that it's not quite bang on. So yeah, just want to have another go to try and get that slightly smoother and more approachable, drinkable texture to it and taste to it. So that we'll save that for a future episode. Thanks for watching today. Let us know in the comments what you think about that deep dive into Old Peculier, and have a go at it yourself at home, either with this recipe or wait till the tweaked one in the future. And until next time, we'll just say frothing ale. Cheers.